I want to invite you to explore my course, The Foundations of Subtle Alignment. Misalignment of the subtle structures is often the root cause of chronic pain, injuries, and chronically high levels of stress hormones. In this course, you will learn about the subtle anatomy and a protocol for assessing and aligning the subtle structures. Hello again, Athena Jezik here. We're in our part 2 of the crook in the neck video, and Corrina did notice when she got up to turn over to the other side that it was still somewhat there, but it was different. It was starting to change. So right now I'm just checking the trapezius here between the shoulder blades, because it's probably running down the back a little bit as well. But we're able to get the front side balanced and all of that. So we're going to check out the back side and see there's a little bit of tension on the opposite side of where the crook is. Now the crook is on this side because she's flipped over. And here's another little tension area. So we've got two counterbalancing things going on, one on either side. And as we get up here, I can feel more kind of anomaly feelings in the muscles there. Just keep moving up. Yeah, for the most part, this feels pretty good. I would say it's more related down into the spine, probably a little bit into the thorax. And now in this position, I can still feel it right along here. This is about where it was before, but it's flatter. It's still a little tight. It's not quite as tight. And it feels like it's covering a little bit bigger area. You know, whenever you have somebody laying on their face in, prone and supine positions, they really do change the feeling of the anatomy. So that's a reason that it's important to know where the anatomy is, because it's still in the same place, but it just feels different because of the lines of gravity. And so you want to be aware of that. Okay. And check there. Okay, I'm going to put some oil on this, and we're going to get into the muscles. And then I'll see if I need to go into the subtle parts as well. The subtle anatomy really does change the outcome of so many things, particularly when you are doing strictly subtle work. It changes a person's energy patterns. It can get into some emotions that have been hidden deep into the tissues, and they can be dealt with. And it's important that we do get into that emotional stuff, because a lot of patterns of sickness and disease are because of trauma, emotional shock or trauma. And oftentimes when the body is hurting in an area that it's really trying to heal, it's trying to point something out at an emotional level, particularly when it's with organ dysfunction. Something like poisoning, or some people say, yes, breaks don't mean quite the same thing. Some people think that it does, so I don't really know. I have found with my situation that there's some emotional stuff that did come up dealing with the area of the legs and hips. So we're very complex. The muscle work is very nice to do, but it's very, very basic as well. So those of you who do have a desire to move into other things, it's just wide open. But my theory is, from my experience, that we want to start with the core and align the body at the subtle level so that things can kind of flow better. The more subtle structures can flow better, and some of the structures that are not even seen, that just carry energy. Now along here, I was feeling that it felt like there was some tension through here, which could be relating up into here. The shoulder blades look like they're about even, so it's not any torsion going on. But right along the vertebrae, it's not bad. It feels like that kind of ironed itself out. Now up here, we're getting a little bit more of a tighter pattern. And I'm doing the massage, so I'm probably about maybe, 20 grams into the weight behind my fingers. And I'm going to stretch the muscles from this direction and also get into the shoulder as well. And this hand is, of course, doing a little bit of traction. Very, very slight traction, subtle traction, I should really say. It's not pulling very hard. When you do that kind of subtle traction like that, it's more of an anchoring. Now here's a muscle anomaly that has a bit of a jump to it, and I could feel, at one point I felt it between the two. So this almost feels like it's a little bit into the rib. Possibly a little into the intercostal. And that's where, the reason I say that is because I can feel it through by driving the energy in. I can feel it through the trapezius and the rhomboids, and feel what's going on underneath those muscles energetically. Now this is much smoother. Let's check that side. Yeah, there's a little more tension on this side right through here than there is on the other side. Yeah, I would say that there's something going on kind of with maybe the intercostal muscle. Maybe just a little subluxation, if that's the right word, for maybe a rib being just a little bit out of position. But it's nothing real serious because she doesn't really feel restricted or has pain when she's moving. So that's just a very subtle structure that's happening there. So let me just get my fingers in here and see if there's any movement that needs to happen. Again, this is not the massage. I'm not doing massage right now. I'm going into this starting out with probably about, maybe 8 grams of pressure, moving out to less than 5 grams, and then I'm going to be pushing in quite a bit of energy right now. And when you do that, you can feel a lot of different activity. I feel a lot of activity under my fingers right now. And the weight of my hand is probably maybe 4 grams right now. I can lighten it up a little bit and push a little more energy in, which will give a little bit more of a sense of what's going on. And that's moving more. It's even moving more as I do that. Yeah, that feels good. It feels like there's a little pulse going on right there. Oh, a therapeutic pulse. And this other hand is just sliding where it is because that's what it's asked to do. when you know how to work this stuff, you really kind of listen to the body, and the body will tell you where it needs to go. Now it's very smooth through here. She's got a strong back, and so some of this is a strong muscle. And in that, it's her right side that muscles are a little more developed, because that's her dominant side. Okay. Just go around the scapula to be sure there's nothing restricting there. That feels good. Let me try. You always want to kind of go to both sides and at least check it out. You don't want to leave one side alone because it feels bad. And sometimes you have to rebalance the other side. But this feels good over here. Feels like it's moving across these different muscle lines real well. And it feels pretty level here. There's still a little bit of a anomaly right here. Just feels like the rib is a little bit higher than it should be. So let me see what the hands want to do, what the body wants my hands to do. When you work subtly when you practice after a while, you really develop your intuitive sense and almost a communication with what the body needs for where it's asking for the hand placement to be. And that does take a lot of practice. So, anything that we do that's worthwhile is going to take time, and it's going to take practice and commitment. And, that's why it's important that you have a love for it and a passion for it so you can be successful. And if you don't have the foundation, take the first rung of the ladder and move up the ladder appropriately, you really aren't going to be able to master it. Anything, I don't care if it's music, violin, drums, guitar, piano, art, anything, woodworking, if you don't really get that basic understanding of it, and practice it, it's not going to, you're just not going to have that mastery because you won't have the understanding. And I learned that from my father. He said, if you don't have the foundation, you don't really have anything to build on. So hopefully that is making sense to some of you. So we have to learn patience, and we have to learn to just take our time, which is hard to do when we're young, because we want to be at the top notch all the time. But it just doesn't work that way. There's a few people that are just naturally talented in things, and they might catch on faster, but they still have to go through the practicing process and, learning even more. So it's always there. Okay, so I'm feeling along here, mostly the trapezius muscle, a little bit into the rhomboid. And we're going around the shoulder blade again, up and around. Okay, and then just right along this shoulder, because it does feel like there's a connection somewhere in here, but that is flattening out quite a bit. And there was quite a bit of subtle technique that I used in there to felt the rib kind of go into a different position as well. So the subtle techniques are very important to know. It just gets the work done a little bit more thorough. So then you just check the other side along the trapezius, and yeah, this feels. Now you want to remember too that there's a dominant side that people have, and a side that's not quite as strong. So one side might feel tighter or bigger than the other, but that's because of the side that's more dominant. It does more of the work, so of course it's going to be a little bit stronger. Now we're going to get back up into the neck here. And feel where it's going on here. Now the lines of gravity change, and so it feels way different than it did when she was laying on her back. And it doesn't feel quite as prominent as far as the knot goes, and it might have been because it released farther down into the spine. So we want to let that just let go a little bit more, and then I'm going to balance it out with the other side. Okay. And then the base of the skull, that's important to get into those muscles. Those muscles are oftentimes very tight. We have a way of placing our head in funny positions. And oftentimes, too, the way we sleep, how our pillows work for us, and pillows and arms underneath us if we're sleeping on our side, that can all affect things. I know I've slept funny sometimes and had to almost help my head move because I was so stiff. But then it just, undoes itself rather quickly. So sleeping can be really hard on people because you become very, very heavy when you sleep. So everything is like, when you wake up, pretty stiff. Now this feels really good through here. The muscle feels nice and smooth. And it feels really good through here. Now whether or not she's going to feel a difference, I don't know. But it does feel, it feels different, but it still feels like there's a little bit of tension on the very edge of the muscle that's coming up, connecting in here, and that would be the trapezius. There's just a little bit of that tension that I felt before, but it doesn't feel like it's as close into the vertebrae. Now here's a little spot right here. And that might be it, but I'm able to get deeper into that spot. Okay. And sometimes, too, you can work something. You don't want to overwork it. And sometimes it'll take maybe a day or so to really work itself out. So if you can't get it all the way out, don't worry about it. If you've made any kind of change, and if the person feels it's different, you're probably going to notice that it may take a few hours, or depending on how tight and how out of alignment it was. It may take, a couple of days, sometimes just a few hours, and it feels better. Because the body has to kind of rearrange itself and work into the muscle memory pattern. And of course with massage, as opposed to subtle anatomy, it's just different the way that the brain is going to take that in, because it's a more superficial change instead of a deep, subtle change. And it feels like there's a little misalignment through here. No, not really. Yeah, that's still got a little bit, but it's different to my touch. And then just massage here. I'm going to kind of get underneath this here. You just kind of wrap your hand underneath and get there. And wrap your hand underneath and get there. Get the whole kind of muscle. And then you can kind of knead it like you're kneading bread. Having the thumbs kind of push up and under while you roll the top part of the muscle over the top of where the thumbs are. And back up the neck, because that's where we really want to stay focused. Although it's all connected when you start working with the spine, and it's all got connection. And I'm just spreading the muscles here, just to give kind of a stretch to it. It's like stretching the muscles and going around that scapula point. They're level, they're even. Yeah, and as I go over this too, I still kind of feel that, but I'm beginning to think that it's not so much a knot or a tension anymore. It's really does now begin to feel like it's just a little bit stronger muscle than the other side, because it feels relatively even. There's a little bit of change, but you know, when you work one side a little more than the other, there is a difference in how that muscle is going to develop, and it will be a little more developed. And also how the sleep patterns are too. That makes a difference too in how things sometimes feel the next day. And I'm giving a little bit of a shaking through this. And then back up through the neck. Through the neck, and then we're going to just massage right at the very base of the skull. Little circular motion. And getting into that muscle, you know, you're along the bone, but you're not totally on the bone. You still have, the muscle is still being worked, but you're right at the attachment point. Okay, that's feeling pretty good. I'm just going to see about a little traction going on here. I'm just holding the base of the skull real gently, and then just seeing if there's any little traction. And I'm actually tractioning in the subtle anatomy. Although there is also a little bit of attraction going on with the bones. Okay, so I think it's going to probably take her a little time to work this one out. It feels like it's changed a bit, but it still does feel like it's a little bit there. And like I have mentioned, that we don't want to overwork the muscle, but I'm going to just get right here and give a little traction right in this area, because this suddenly feels like it might be moving down into this area a little bit more, maybe the levator muscle. See if that can unlock at all. And I'm doing this a little bit more on the subtle side than the muscle side. Oh, did you feel that? There was kind of it felt like there was a big release right here when I did that, like it felt like, you know, when you have a puzzle and you're putting a piece in the puzzle and you can't quite get it and then it goes thug. That's what it felt like. It just happened. That might have been that where it's been holding. Because that was a really big shift. Now, how it relates up here, that may take a while before it gets all the way up to relate here, but that may have been contributing to this whole thing because it's all connected in through this area, partly the trapezius. It may be a little bit into the levator muscle in that it's higher in the kind of in the vertebrae. It suggests to me that it's probably more the levator muscle, and where I was along the levator scapula. And now it's very smooth through there. Yeah, let me check down here. That even seemed to change that pattern as well. So I think that's probably about all we can do. Maybe just let the head relax a little with some of the... Now I am on the bone here. I'm moving the scalp, the skin on the head. Not just, you know, it's really kind of my way of being aggressive. Like washing your hair and getting right down to the roots. That feels good sometimes to do that. Some people don't like it, especially if you have oil on your hands, but okay, let's check all this again one more time. Well, that feels to my touch much smoother, like there's not these little puzzle pieces that aren't fitting. That one was real big. There is something going on right here. And I think this is from just the work that she does, maybe the way she sits at the computer, driving or something like that. But it doesn't feel bad. It just feels like it's been worked differently than this side. And also she does play the guitar, so that, and this is the strumming arm, and that is exactly what it feels like the action probably is. So she's using the arms differently in playing the guitar, so it's little things like that that, you know, do change some of the muscle patterning and some of the muscle strengths in different sides. And if she's playing the guitar with that arm, it could also be, she might be kind of moving the head in a funny way, not really even realizing it, which could be just wearing a little bit differently in the neck. So that could be a possibility. And then, of course, if she slept crooked or anything like that. So you want to take all that into consideration because you're never going to really be totally symmetrical and you're not going to feel total symmetry unless somebody's really diligent about working both sides of their body exactly the same all the time, and that's pretty rare to find. But that is a good, you know, reminder to let you know that even though it might not feel the same on both sides, it doesn't necessarily mean that there hasn't been a good amount of work done on either side, on both sides, and that there's been changes happening. So we'll see how that goes with her neck, and it does feel, it felt like when this released up here, this was beginning to change, and then this feels like it's changed even a little bit more. But again, that's to my touch, and Corrina is the one that's going to know for sure because it's her body. But all in all, I think that we did quite a bit of good work on there. We got some releases happening, and they were pretty good releases. So I think that that's about all you can do. So you never want to beat up on yourself about that you didn't do enough or something like that, because just do the best you can do and be gentle and caring, and it'll all work out fine. So with that, I say thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Misalignment of the subtle structures is often the root cause of chronic pain, injuries, and chronically high levels of stress hormones. In this course, The Foundations of Subtle Alignment, you will learn about the subtle anatomy and a protocol for assessing and aligning the subtle structures.